Developing right now on Morning News Now, a major escalation in America's war on drugs. Nearly a dozen people killed during a U.S. strike in the waters of the Caribbean on a vessel that President Trump says was part of a drug operation by a notorious Venezuelan gang. Plus, a new legal setback in the Trump administration's controversial deportation efforts. And the U.S. Space Command moving out of Colorado as the president criticizes the state's vote-by-mail laws. We will take you to Washington. Also this morning, the Jeffrey Epstein case back in the spotlight after tens of thousands of pages of files are released. This as survivors and loved ones accusing the late Epstein of sexual abuse speak out in an exclusive interview with NBC News.
Each of us, in our own way, over the past several decades, have stood up and told our stories so that someone would listen to us, only to be faced with the frustration of being ignored.
We have to stand up, and we have to say enough is enough.
Now, those accusers preparing to send a message on Capitol Hill. We will bring you the latest. Plus, a show of force as China puts its troops and weaponry on display in one of the superpower's biggest military parades, with Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in attendance. Their message to the West. And music as medicine. We will explain how some of your favorite songs could be the cure for a common condition. That's always one where we learn something new about it.
Music heals everything. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for being here today. We're going to begin this morning with this dramatic escalation in the Trump administration's efforts to stem the flow of narcotics from Latin America into the United States. The president announced a deadly U.S. strike on a vessel in the southern Caribbean yesterday that he said was carrying drugs from Venezuela.
The White House released this video that appears to show a speedboat exploding in flames. President Trump claimed the boat was operated by the gang Tren de Aragua.
We just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela, so we took it out.
The administration also faced a major legal setback yesterday. A federal appeals court ruled that it can no longer use the 18th century wartime law called the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged Venezuelan gang members. We're going to break down that ruling with our NBC News legal analyst, Danny Ceballos, in just a moment. First, let's go to White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard for more in Washington. Vaughn, good morning. So tell us more about what the president says this strike in the Caribbean accomplished, and how is Venezuela responding?
Right. Good morning, Joe and Savannah. In a social media post after the strike, which included apparent video of a ship going up in flames, we should note there are still scant details out this hour and specifics about the military operation that was underway. But the president in a social media post saying, quote, "Please let this serve as a notice to anybody, even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America, beware." The White House indicating that 11 individuals who they claimed to be members of Tren de Aragua out of Venezuela were killed, that this was a drug-carrying vessel headed to the United States. Again, that's according to the White House. Venezuela has pushed back, President Maduro suggesting that this type of effort is a staging to try to push him out of government. Of course, during the first Trump administration, there was an effort to see Maduro leave office. Just last month, the U.S. sent 3 guided missile destroyers into the Caribbean. This is quite a response to see this sort of action in these international waters by the United States. But the White House wanting to send a message that it will stop any drugs that are intended on their way here to the United States, guys.
Vaughn, also on another note, we mentioned this, the president announced just yesterday that he's relocating the headquarters of the U.S. Space Command. That's this joint military force that defends U.S. interests in space. That is moving from Colorado to Huntsville, Alabama. What is the backstory there?
Right. He held a press conference yesterday to make this announcement. He was flanked by Vice President Vance and Defense Secretary Hegseth, but also the 2 U.S. senators from Alabama, Katie Britt and Tommy Tuberville. And he was suggesting that this move into Huntsville Number one was a move that would put them near not only one key NASA space mission operation, but also several other private space entities, including Boeing and Lockheed Martin. But the president, we should be clear, when he justified at that press conference yesterday his reasoning for moving the Space Command from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama, the one key reason that he provided was because Colorado allows mail-in voting. Of course, those are very separate issues, but the president just last week said he wants to ban mail-in voting. And yesterday from the White House at that podium, they're suggesting that that was a key reason why he moved Space Command out of Colorado into Alabama, of course, a deeply Republican state.
Vaughn, before we let you go, I want to ask you about that ruling from the Federal Appeals Court. It bars the Trump administration from continuing to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport alleged gang members. The use of this wartime law, immediately raised questions back in March when we saw the administration deporting hundreds of Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador. The legal battle we know isn't over, but for the Trump administration, how big of a defeat is this right now?
Right, you're absolutely right, Joe. We could expect the Trump administration to try to take this to the Supreme Court here. But in this 2-to-1 decision from the appellate court, there was a George W. Bush and Joe Biden nominee that were in the majority there. The one dissent on the appellate court was a Trump appointee judge. But this is a defeat because, in large part, this was not only a rebuke of their actions earlier this year. Of course, folks will recall when hundreds of individuals who the Trump administration alleged to be members of the Tren de Aragua gang were deported from the United States and sent to that El Salvador mega prison. Of course, we quickly found that there were deep, serious questions about the legitimacy of claims about many of those individuals who were said to be members of this gang. But the appellate court making clear in their ruling that they found that there was no invasion or predatory incursion by these gangs that the White House had designated to be terrorist organizations, which was the impetus of invoking this wartime act during this time of peace, and the court making clear that the administration does not have the authority to at least deport individuals under this law.
All right, Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, thank you so much.
Let's bring in Danny Cevallos for more on this federal appeals court ruling. So first, Danny, explain the court's decision to us. What limitations does it kind of put into place when it comes to the deportation of migrants?
Yeah, Vaughn Hilliard did a great job there. But essentially, the court noted that this is something that has come up really only about 3 times in our nation's history. That's how rarely the statute gets examined by courts. But here's the key. Was what the executive order sought to combat, was that a predatory incursion? Was that an invasion within the statute? Because if it is, then the president has the power. If not, then he doesn't. But I caution that this is a very narrow ruling in the sense that there are still other avenues for removal that are available, both statutory and otherwise, and the government can continue to use those. This is a narrow, even though it's 130 pages, this is a narrow decision that not only that this was not an incursion or a predatory incursion or invasion, but also it is narrow in the sense that it allows the president to go forward, and it's temporary in the sense that it's only an injunction. So many of these things we deal with in a Trump term are preliminary injunctions. They're not final decisions on the merits. The case actually goes back down to the district court. But what the court has done now, and what they have to do in these cases, is kind of do like a calculate the odds, almost like gambling. Like the petitioners have to show, hey, we're likely to win. So court, you need to analyze our likelihood of success on the merits of the case, even though you're not deciding the merits of the case quite yet.
We know around 250 Venezuelan migrants were deported to this mega prison in El Salvador last March. A New York Times investigation later found most of them did not have criminal records here in the U.S. So this ruling now, does it change anything for those who've already been deported under this law?
So here's the key. The answer is maybe not, because the administration's argument is going to be is once they're gone, they've already tried to use this. Once they're gone, they're outside of our control. The courts, the administration, we have no power over people who have actually already been removed. There is no longer a remedy because they're no longer here. We can't jurisdictionally reach out and grab them. So that is probably going to be the administration's position. And the other important thing is that by removing them, time is everything. That highlights the fact that petitioners need to get to court as fast as they can. And we've seen in just the last few months, people had to file their petitions within hours and wake up judges at 2 a.m. So this is a really interesting era, I would say, of filing petitions, because they need to be filed within minutes sometimes to prevent removal, because once removed, it's a bell you might not be able to unring.
I want to ask you about another loss here for the Trump administration, legal loss. This is a federal judge in California ruling that Trump's decision to deploy thousands of these National Guard troops and Marines to L.A. back in June was illegal. We do have a statement here from the White House. They said, once again, a rogue judge is trying to usurp the authority of the commander-in-chief to protect American cities from violence and destruction. Walk us through here what this judge said. How did they say the Trump administration broke the law?
We start with the default. When we talk about cities like D.C., D.C. is an anomaly. D.C. is under federal jurisdiction. D.C. is under the command, so to speak, of the president already. Now, of course, they have a local government, but in essence, D.C. is a federal enclave. On the other hand, the trickier constitutional issue is, can the president federalize National Guard troops and send them into another state over that governor's objection? So there are a lot of different issues here. The default position is that the National Guard is under the command of a state's governor. The president can federalize those troops, but only under certain statutory authority. The challenge is that the Trump administration is very good at finding the nebulous language in the statute, and so they've justified mobilizing these troops really to send them in, likely for law enforcement. But another statute, the Posse Comitatus Act, expressly prohibits National Guardsmen, federal troops, from directly engaging in law enforcement. But the administration's approach is, well, what if they're protecting a building? What if they're doing something else that isn't directly enforcing the law? Because that is classically a state power to enforce the law and protect its residents.
All right, Danny Savalos, thank you very much.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell will make their voices heard this morning on Capitol Hill. They're part of a Stand With Survivors rally. Just yesterday, the House committee investigating Epstein released a trove of files related to the convicted sex offender. Comes as the Trump administration faces mounting pressure to release more information about his case. Now, the content of all the records was not immediately clear, but many of these files have already been made public.
Democrat Ro Khanna and Republican Thomas Massie are leading a bipartisan push in the House for the release of the Epstein files. They will hold a press conference with some of Epstein's victims after that rally this morning. Khanna had this to say on MSNBC last night.
This is not partisan. This is not anti-Trump. This is about standing with survivors. This is about protecting kids. This is about morality.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona, who joins us with the latest. Mel, good morning. So first, what more can you tell us about this batch of documents the House committee released last night? Anything new or newsworthy here?
Yeah, good morning, guys. It does appear that after an NBC News review of these files, that most of what was released yesterday was already publicly available information. So things like public court filings and transcripts from the trials, investigative files from the Palm Beach Police Department. Now, there were some flight logs. That may have been the only real new piece of information from Epstein's plane. Some of that information was already available, but what they released yesterday appears to be more current than what had already been publicly available. That being said, it doesn't say who was actually on the plane, just lists the number of people, does indicate that there were both males and females on that plane, in addition to Epstein, of course. And overall, of these, some 30,000 pages of documents, it represents only a fraction of what the DOJ overall has in its possession that relates to this case. So the question is whether the DOJ is going to be handing over more files to the House Oversight Committee, which did issue a subpoena for the documents related to this case. The DOJ has insisted this is a first batch. That is what we heard from Speaker Mike Johnson and Oversight Chair James Comer as well. But there's a real question about whether this might be the extent of what the committee actually receives.
Mel, in one of the first House actions since lawmakers returned from their summer recess, Republican Representative Thomas Massie, who we were just discussing there, he filed a discharge petition yesterday to force a vote compelling the Justice Department to release all of the Epstein files. Has Massie said why he's so adamant about this, and how is GOP leadership responding here?
Well, for Massey, his sort of argument is that he doesn't trust the DOJ or the Trump administration to turn over all the information. He believes the only real way to get their hands on this information is his measure, the one you mentioned, that essentially calls for the immediate release of essentially all the files with very minimal redactions. And now, in terms of how the GOP leadership is responding, I'm told they've been mounting an all-out effort to try to stop this so-called discharge petition. They teed up a separate sort of symbolic measure that they're going to vote on this week, just encouraging the House Oversight Committee investigation. And they also decided to release those files publicly yesterday. This is all part of a strategy behind the scenes. And meanwhile, we're also hearing that the White House has been lobbying members, Republican members, not to back that discharge petition, at least according to Thomas Massey. Take a listen to what he said last night.
They are trying very hard to keep this from getting the requisite number of signatures to force the vote. And I think it's foolhardy. I think we'd be served better politically. Obviously, the victims would be served better in terms of justice, but Republicans would be served better politically by just following through on this promise and releasing the files.
So as of right now, only 4 Republicans, including Massey, have signed on to this discharge petition. They need 218 lawmakers total. And assuming that all Democrats sign on, that means they need 6 Republicans total. So they're close, but they're not quite there yet. And at least 2 Republicans who previously said they might sign on to this discharge petition now saying they're not going to back it because of the public release of those files last night. But it's something that we're certainly watching on Capitol Hill over these next few days.
And Mel, it's going to be an important day for Epstein victims on the Hill today. We're going to hear from some of them more in a moment. But what can we expect from this Stand With Survivors rally and the press conference that's supposed to follow?
Yeah, I think it could be a really powerful and explosive moment. We're expecting to hear from 10 victims and survivors, some of which have never even spoken out publicly before, according to both Thomas Massey and Rokana, who are helping to organize this press conference. This comes after yesterday some victims also had a private roundtable behind closed doors with a bipartisan group of members. Speaker Johnson was also in attendance. The question, of course, is whether some of these new public insights potentially in these powerful stories are enough to sway some members to sign on to that discharge petition that we talked about. Regardless, though, it's pretty clear that this is going to be an issue that stays in the spotlight on Capitol Hill for quite some time.
No doubt. All right, Mel, thank you.
Well, while we expect to hear more from Epstein's victims later today, as we mentioned, NBC News senior Washington correspondent Hallie Jackson sat down for an exclusive interview with some of the survivors and their families. They shared their stories, with one survivor calling a potential presidential pardon for Maxwell a, quote, slap in the face.
A show of hands here, if you or somebody you love was abused or trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. All of you.
For the first time publicly, 9 Jeffrey Epstein survivors or their relatives together.
Why did you decide to come here today?
I'm coming here because there's been a severe miscarriage of justice, a delay in accountability.
Each of us, in our own way, over the past several decades, have stood up and told our stories so that someone would listen to us, only to be faced with the frustration of being ignored.
Alone we are afraid, together we are feared.
Jenna Lisa Jones, Lisa Phillips, Jess Michaels, Marika Chartouni, Liz Stein, the siblings of Virginia Roberts Giuffre.
She should be here. I am so honored to be here with you guys. She would be here. She'd be screaming, you know.
And Wendy Avis.
Were you abused by Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes.
She has never before spoken out about the abuse she says she suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein when she was a teenager in Florida.
Because I just put it behind, you didn't talk about it, didn't think about it, nothing. And it was kind of like, okay, now you have to heal from this. Now you have to address it and face it for the first time ever. Like, this is real.
How many of you want to see more documents released publicly related to the Epstein case?
They tell us no one from the Justice Department has reached out to them.
Nobody in this room has heard at all from the Department of Justice?
No.
And they're furious about the interview between the Deputy Attorney General and convicted Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, conducted over 2 straight days in July.
There's no reason why someone like that should be platformed when we are ignored.
She is the abuser, and why are we so concerned with how she feels about things? And her opinions.
Now they want more accountability and more investigations from the Justice Department.
Who else would like to see the DOJ reopen this investigation?
Yeah.
Okay. All of you.
Had they done their job in the first place, none of us would have to be sitting here on camera today.
President Trump has downplayed the renewed attention on the Epstein case. And while White House officials have said no leniency is being discussed in Maxwell's case, the president has not publicly ruled out a pardon for her.
Show of hands, who would like to see President Trump definitively rule out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell? Every single one of you.
Pledging they will not be silent in their push for accountability.
As a community, we have to stand up and we have to say enough is enough. Enough is enough. No more. We have to change the culture, and we have to provide safety and protection and belief when people come forward. It's what Virginia would be doing right now.
Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney tells NBC News that they cannot, quote, respond to every outlandish claim or wouldn't be able to get any actual work done. Adding, and again, quoting here from David Marcus, that only when, quote, plaintiff's lawyers came knocking did they start pointing the finger at his client. We have also reached out to the White House and to the Justice Department, but have not yet heard back. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you.
In weather now, cold front on the move, bringing showers and storms to the Midwest and the Central Plains.
Once again, it's like fall, and here we are. Angie Lassman's here to tell us more. Hi, Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. I think it's an easy game of find the cold front today. You can see exactly where it is, kind of marching some of those showers farther into parts of the Great Lakes and in the Midwest, and even stretching back into parts of the plains. And that's kind of the general area that we're going to see the unsettled weather through the day today. But already waking up to some rain in places like Green Bay and going back into parts of Iowa. Later today, this line shifts to the east. So this is 8 p.m. So between now and then, we're going to see it work across the Great Lakes. Michigan really starting to see some of that rain stretching into parts of Illinois, Indiana, and then back towards the plains, we'll see the chance for some stronger storms. So where you see that yellow shading, it's a small area, but it does include Kansas City and Wichita, where we could see that severe risk lasting into our afternoon hours. By the time we get into tomorrow, this system, we're not done with it just yet. It shifts to the east even more, kind of rotates some of this rain into parts of the Northeast. We've had a nice stretch of really pleasant, dry weather across this region, but really do need some of this rain to kind of keep the fire threat at bay moving forward through the rest of the season. So we're going to watch for brief periods of some heavy rain and also some gusty winds as that works through. Between now and then, really through Thursday, not an impressive amount of rain by any means, but could interrupt some of those outdoor plans. We've got about a quarter of an inch that we're expecting. Some pockets of higher amounts up to an inch in places like northern Michigan and western New York. Now, as we get through the next couple of days, we're going to slowly but surely start to see things improve when it comes to temperatures out west, but not just yet. Still the Pacific Northwest under these heat alerts. And we've got another day where we could see some records likely. 99 degrees in Spokane later today, more than 20 degrees above normal. The heat wave continues there. But look what the cold front is doing to our friends in the Midwest. We've got just 64 degrees for the high in Minneapolis today. Notice the 50s that are on tap in Duluth tomorrow, upper 60s for Detroit. Even Louisville going to be running cooler than normal for this time of year as we head into the just mid 70s. And then we settle into a cooler kind of pattern for the Midwest. As we round out our work week, it's 60s on tap for Green Bay all the way through the weekend. We've still got those warm summer-like temperatures in places like Philly for Friday and Saturday, but we do see a bit of a drop in temperatures by the time Sunday rolls around, guys, going from the high 80s to the mid 70s.
Looks like a nice weekend.
It does, yeah. And we'll get a little rain. Unfortunately, we need some rain here, so we'll take it.
Yeah. Again, it's September.
It's
I'll allow it. Thank you, Angie.
You got it.
Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, McDonald's adding value to its meals. More on the menu move as the chain works to win back customers.
Up first, after the break, China and its allies sending a message to the West with a massive military parade. How President Trump is responding this morning. We'll be right back. We are back with a show of military might from China. Overnight, the superpower unveiled an array of state-of-the-art weapons and hardware in the country's largest ever military parade.
The ceremony was held to mark 80 years since the end of World War II and Japan's defeat in China. 26 world leaders attended, including Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now from Beijing. Janice, good morning. So just talk to us about the scale, the scope of this parade, what was on display, and ultimately what did we hear from President Xi during his remarks?
This was China's largest military parade yet. This display of strength and ambition as Xi Jinping was stoking national pride, but also showing the world that China's clout is growing. Some of the PLA's most advanced weapons were on display, including new hypersonic anti-ship missiles, underwater drones, and what's being billed as the world's most powerful laser. The event, as you mentioned, marked the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II, and there is this effort here to reshape the post-war narrative around China's contributions. But just as significant for Xi, the world leaders who came to Beijing to watch it with him, from Russia, North Korea, Iran, nearly 24, mostly authoritarian countries. But Kim Jong-un grabbing the spotlight from the moment he arrived in that armored train from Pyongyang. He brought his daughter, who's seen as a potential successor, and thanked Xi Jinping for his hospitality. Vladimir Putin had been here for the past several days. He was holding hands with Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, at a summit on the weekend, and had private meetings with Xi. All of this getting attention in Washington. President Trump posting to Truth Social as the parade got underway, saying, quote, "Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America." The leaders were watching the parade unfold from the balcony above the iconic Mao portrait in Tiananmen Square. There were hundreds of foreign media gathered there. We weren't allowed to turn our cameras in that direction to get the image of Xi, Putin, and Kim together. Just one of the examples of the security for this event, with restrictions hitting roads, schools, entire neighborhoods where people couldn't cook breakfast because it would have created smoke this morning, all for a 70-minute show, but one with very high stakes for Xi Jinping. Savannah and Joe.
All right, Janice, thank you so much.
In the Middle East, health officials in Gaza say the number of people who've died from famine and malnutrition has risen to 367. 131 of them are children. Israel has been restricting the flow of food aid into the Palestinian enclave for months, sparking global condemnation. Gaza City is now the subject of a major Israeli military campaign as Prime Minister Netanyahu calls up reservists for a new ground offensive. But some are refusing that call. NBC's chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has more, and a warning: some of the images in this report are distressing.
Palestinians are fleeing from Gaza City again, getting out before Israel launches a major ground offensive against the city. The Israeli government says to root out Hamas and search for hostages. Palestinians are heading south to a so-called safe zone where Israel claims food and shelter will be provided. Bahed Awad and his 8-year-old sister Ilham were in that safe zone, walking barefoot to a charity kitchen. I wish I could be like kids around the world, reading, studying, and learning, Fahed says. These children were also in that safe zone. They were collecting water when their families and the Ministry of Health say they were hit by an Israeli strike. The hospital can't cope. An injured boy shares a stretcher with another who just died. 2 dead sisters are laid side by side as a child bleeds on the floor. The Israeli military claims it did not carry out attacks in the area. As Israel is in the midst of calling up 60,000 reservists for the offensive on Gaza City, a small group announced in Tel Aviv they're refusing to serve, which here could lead to jail time. Max Kirsch, an American-Israeli, proudly served in the Israeli army on numerous occasions, including after Hamas went on a murder and kidnapping rampage nearly 2 years ago.
Why don't you support the war now? The war right now is a direct threat to our future. It's a direct threat to the future of Israelis, of civilians, of our own values.
So far, Prime Minister Netanyahu appears unconcerned by opposition in the ranks. He thanked reservists who are reporting for duty and said the war is now in a decisive phase.
All right, Richard, thank you. The victims of last week's shooting at Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis are slowly recovering. That includes a 10-year-old boy who went viral for recounting how his friend saved his life by jumping on top of him. Well, now, doctors have actually discovered a bullet fragment in the neck of that boy. Reporter Lou Ragoose with our Twin Cities affiliate KARE 11 has the details.
hours after the horrific shooting at Annunciation Catholic Church.
It was really scary.
10-year-old Weston Halsney, along with his grandpa and his dad, returned to the police tape to share how his life was saved.
My friend Victor, saved me, though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit.
Your friend laid on top of you?
Yeah, and he got hit. He's really brave, and I hope he's good in the hospital.
That friend, Victor Greenewalt, is now recovering at home after 2 days in the hospital, his family says on their GoFundMe page.
I hope you're okay, and I'm praying for you.
Weston, his innocent voice resonating with so many people watching coverage of the shooting, was just 2 seats away from the windows where the gunman fired. His family thought he was completely spared.
I think I got gunpowder on my neck.
When they did the x-ray, I was like, oh, my jaw hit the floor.
Weston's parents took him to the doctor as a precaution and learned that what they thought was gunpowder was actually a bullet fragment.
It traveled all the way through and stopped right before his carotid artery. So he's a very, very lucky little boy.
Grant Halsney says the fragment is actually resting on the carotid artery.
So just ran out of momentum just in time. So we're very, very thankful for that.
So Weston's return to normalcy after the shooting now takes a short detour at Children's Hospital, where a surgeon is removing the fragment in what Grant calls a delicate but low-risk surgery.
And yeah, I'm just praying for the best.
Grant says he's also still trying to process everything his son and his schoolmates have experienced.
Kids, they don't deserve to go through this. It's unthinkable.
Our thanks to Lou Ragoose for that report. On Sunday, Minneapolis police did revise the number of people injured in the shooting from 18 to 21, adding 3 children to the count. It's not clear whether Weston was included in that new total. Weston is expected to have that surgery soon.
Oh, gosh, he said it there, but that little voice just resonated with so many people around the world. Well, now it is time for our weekly medical checkup. And this week, we are diving into new research. It shows what groups may be at higher risk of heart failure.
Plus, a look inside a recent study showing the surprising gaps in what people really know about prostate cancer and its symptoms.
Let's bring in our friend, NBC News medical contributor, Dr. Natalie Azar. Dr. Azar, good morning. Always great to have you with us. Okay, let's start with this first study here. I just mentioned this a moment ago. So it found that Black adults in the U.S. are hospitalized for heart failure nearly 14 years earlier than white adults. What do we think is behind that gap there, and what can people do to protect themselves?
Yeah, so it's startling and yet not that surprising, because we know, unfortunately, that Black adults across the board in terms of cardiovascular outcomes do less well than their white counterparts. So this study looked at tens of thousands of medical records, and indeed they found that Black adults tended to be hospitalized at age 60, while their white counterparts were hospitalized 14 years later at the age of 73. It's also notable that Hispanic and Asian patients were also hospitalized at an earlier age. Why is this happening? Well, we talk about this a lot, the social determinants of health. We're talking about economic opportunities, health literacy, education, access to quality health care. All of these things are thought to be the explanation behind these findings. So my doctor's orders are, of course, know your family history, a family history of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. All of those things are important, need to be controlled, and you need to get screened early. And what does that mean? It means making, at a minimum, a yearly visit with a primary care doctor, and if there's concern about cardiovascular disease, that you get referral to cardiology, because this is some place where we really can make an intervention.
We also have now a new study from The Ohio State University finds most Americans don't know that the early stage prostate cancer often has no symptoms.
Exactly.
That's one of the reasons it's so dangerous and so often deadly. So what is it we should be looking out for?
Right. So in this study, they did indeed find that about 80% of individuals are unaware that early stage prostate cancer is completely asymptomatic. It is interesting to note that Black adults were actually more likely to recognize fatigue and weight loss, and sexual dysfunction, which is one of the very early symptoms of prostate cancer, was noted by partners first, because some men may just brush it off. This, I think, I just have to make a point about this. A number of years ago, there was a change in screening so that men weren't necessarily routinely recommended to get PSA levels, and that's actually probably contributed to a rise in later stage prostate cancer. So it is important for men to understand that sexual dysfunction and urinary symptoms are some of the earliest symptoms of prostate cancer. My doctor's orders: talk to your partner, but more importantly, talk to your doctor about screening. For white men, the screening is recommended to start around age 50. For Black men, it's age 45, and don't wait for symptoms. But certainly if you do have any of the symptoms I mentioned, you must be evaluated.
doctor,
it's not
yeah.
necessarily prostate cancer, but you want to make sure.
Yep.
Oh, wow, really good advice there. Okay, also, we talked about this at the top of the show, the way that music can kind of potentially help with something here. Maybe if you're feeling like queasy and it's in a car, I'm a huge car sickness person. Oh,
Yes.
what is this? What's this research?
Okay, you know we love these to end on a fun
Yeah.
note, right? Okay, yeah, and I wish I had known this. I wish my poor parents had known this growing up, right? For every car ride and every airplane descent. So, so what they did was they induced motion sickness in individuals, and then they tested them listening to different types of music and what type of music made their symptoms better. Well, it turns out that upbeat, high timbre, melodic helped their motion sickness, while sad music was worse than doing nothing at all.
Okay.
So think about that. So my doctor's orders are, if you're a motion sickness person, you have little kids, make a feel-good playlist and avoid sad tunes the next time around. So how do they think this is working? It's basically tricking your mind. It's basically about the sensory input. And if you distract your brain with upbeat music, it is less focused on the nausea centers and it's more focused on these reward centers. So there's like a neuroscience explanation, but what is that? I mean, do I not deliver news that you can use?
Right, no kidding.
Right.
Don't listen to the crying music.
Don't listen
the
to
soft
crying
ballads,
music. Like, actually,
funny. You're
but who
gonna
plays
barf
that in the car anyway?
Right.
Like, that's a weird car ride anyway. But
Especially when you're like barfy already and you're like, just give me the sound.
No, exactly. Or at least silence, if nothing else.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Dr. Azar, thank you so
Thanks.
much.
You're welcome.
Coming up, there is a new force in the fashion world.
Yeah, when we come back, what we're learning about the new editor of American Vogue. You're watching Morning News Now.
Back now with a check on the pulse of our economy and what it ultimately means for your wallet.
Yeah, get ready for some new bargains, at least at your favorite fast food chains. McDonald's just announced a series of new extra value meals. Those are going to hit their menu starting next week. But they're not the only chain to slash prices. So what does that tell us about how Americans are spending their money?
Here to break it all down for us, NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans. Good to have you with us. I feel like all these things these corporations are doing are giving us some really good insight into how the consumer is behaving right now. And this McDonald's, but I mean, obviously people want cheaper prices, but what's it telling us about what people are looking for?
I mean, the McDonald's CEO himself said there's a two-tier economy. He said people making $100,000 or more are doing just fine. They've got equity in their home. They've got record high stock prices, but it's the middle and lower income consumer who are spending less money. And so when you look at the backdrop of that, look at how much more people are paying over the past 5 years for the everyday things that you cannot, non-negotiable expenses. So you can see this fatigue among consumers. And I think that is the lens that I look through all of these fast food deals. You see McDonald's coming back with the extra value meal, 8 big meals that'll be basically a 15% savings. So this is actually cutting prices. That's the first new wave in this whole deal craze. A $5 sausage McMuffin with hash browns and coffee, an $8 Big Mac with soft drinks, and then a bunch of other folks are doing it too. Little Caesars, Taco Bell has this Decades Y2K menu with $3 items. Denny's has a $5 Slams value menu, and Chipotle has this build your own family style thing so that you can very value focused. So all of these things are good news for consumers because consumers have been voting with their feet and they have been going to fast food restaurants less because they're trying to save money.
So it's kind of confusing, though, right? Like this whole mosaic of the economy and how people are feeling, because the stock markets are up. In fact, NASDAQ is included in that, up 20%. But then consumers, it seems in some way, still afraid to spend. What's going on here?
So there's Main Street and there's Wall Street. And Wall Street right now is figuring out how to navigate all this uncertainty over tariffs and inflation and high interest rates. And Main Street is feeling it every single day. And Wall Street is big companies. And this is Wall Street reflects, those stock market prices reflect the earnings of these companies. So it's really, again, a two-tier kind of economy. Now, there are plenty of people who are concerned that artificial intelligence investments maybe has overinflated parts of the stock market and maybe there's some reckoning coming. No one knows for sure, but for now, stock prices and home prices have stayed high, which is why those higher income consumers are doing better than paycheck to paycheck customers.
Let's talk about the Fed here. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is set to step down or be done with his term in a little bit. So now the Treasury Secretary is going to start interviewing people to replace him this week. This is going to be a big deal for the economy, whoever they put in here, right?
It really is. And we knew that Jerome Powell, the Fed chief, his term was over next May, so that's not a surprise. Who the White House proposes to replace these these positions, an open position and then this position too. That will be very important for the direction and the independence of the Federal Reserve. We know the independence of the Fed is just paramount for the stability of the U.S. system and also the way the U.S. is sort of a beacon and it attracts all this investment from around the world. So there is still some concern about a White House meddling with the independence of this Fed.
All right, Christine, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, let's stay on Wall Street. Google parent Alphabet is feeling lucky this morning after a new ruling in that landmark antitrust case.
CNBC's Savannah now is the latest on that and some other money news. Savannah, good morning.
Joe, Savannah, good morning to you. So shares of Alphabet, we're seeing them jumping as a judge rules Google won't have to sell its Chrome browser in the company's landmark antitrust case. So last year, the judge found Google has an illegal monopoly in search. Google will be barred from striking exclusive deals with device makers to preload its apps in order to get access to the Google Play Store, but it will be able to keep its partnership with Apple to have Chrome as the default search engine on the iPhone. Apple moving higher on that news. Meanwhile, Amazon is cracking down on the sharing of Prime free shipping. It's getting rid of the Prime Invitee program, which lets members share free shipping benefits with people outside their household. So the program will end October 1st. That's according to a notice sent to users. Instead, Amazon is promoting its Amazon Family Plan, which lets users share Prime benefits with one other adult, but they must have the same mailing address. And holiday spending could see the steepest drop since the pandemic as shoppers pull back. So a new survey by PwC finds consumers plan to spend an average of about $1,500. That's down more than 5% from last year. More than 80% expect to curb their spending over the next 6 months, especially on apparel, big-ticket items, and dining out. And more than half say higher prices are likely to affect their holiday decisions. Spending on gifts is expected to take the hardest hit, falling 11% to an average of $721, guys.
Be warned.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Thanks, Savannah.
Thanks. Well, for the first time in nearly 4 decades, American Vogue has new editorial leadership.
39-year-old Chloe Mal has been named the magazine's new head of editorial content. Until now, she's been the editor of Vogue's website and the co-host of its podcast, The Run Through with Vogue. Mal will report to Anna Wintour, who has served as editor-in-chief of the magazine for the last 37 years, so that would be since Mal was 2 years old.
For more on this, let's bring in Vanessa Friedman. She is the fashion director and chief fashion critic at the New York Times. Vanessa, good morning. When Anna Wintour named Chloe Mal into this role, she said that she knew that she had, quote, one chance to get it right. Tell us a little bit more about Chloe's background, other than what Joe just mentioned, why you think she was chosen and kind of like Anna's thought process getting to this point.
Well, I would never presume to be inside Anna Wintour's brain. Or to know what her thought process was. But, clearly, Chloe has spent a lot of her career at Vogue. She understands the magazine. She understands Anna's vision for the magazine. And she probably understands how it needs to change. So I thought she was a really interesting choice. She was, someone most people actually were betting on. She was the front runner for the job, both because of her insider credentials and because she seemed like someone who could bring, I think, a new perspective. And most notably, she comes from the feature side of the magazine. She's not a stylist. She doesn't dress celebrities. She works with them. She obviously knows them. But she is not from the fashion side of the magazine.
And we should know, we're seeing pictures of her with Candace Bergen. If folks are scratching their head, that's because?
She's her mom.
There you go. So rather than getting the title editor, Mal has been named the head of editorial content, perhaps because no one could ever take Anna Wintour's place. But also, what does this say about how much the magazine industry has changed since Vogue first started?
She's the HOEC. Right? Doesn't quite trip off the tongue with the same
no.
illicit as the EIC. Hi, I'm the HOEC. I think it's a reflection of the fact that, magazines are now really content generators, right? They're not really print products. And that's what her job is going to be, right? To sort of reimagine what Vogue is for this new era where it is about content. It's not about the page.
I mean, Anna, she's also not leaving in addition to, just staying in her office, it seems like. I mean, she's set to stay on at Condé Nast as the company's chief content officer. You're just stressing kind of the importance of content in exactly that role. She'll also be Mao's boss. What do you think that arrangement ultimately means for Mao's new role, for the passing of the baton, and like how much autonomy she's going to have?
I mean, that is the big question in everyone's mind, and we will have to see. Anna has said that one of the reasons she wanted to step away from hands-on day-to-day operations of American Vogue was the fact that she wanted to concentrate more on shaping international Vogues, and sort of bringing the brand together. Now, what that means in terms of how detail-oriented she's going to be when it comes to the U.S. product is unclear, but obviously, Chloe is walking a very fine tightrope between her own idea and Anna's idea.
It will be an interesting thing to watch unfold. Vanessa Friedman, thank you very much for joining us. Fun to have you today.
Pleasure.
Well, coming up, hold the phone. Some parents giving old technology a new life for their kids.
I was really excited because I had wanted one after I heard that I couldn't get a cell phone.
When we come back, more on the telephone trend that's getting really younger generations dialed in on life without smartphones. Don't put us on hold. This is Morning News Now. Welcome back. Live from New York, season 51 is coming. SNL is shaking things up for the new season with a bunch of new cast members and departures. Let's start with who's leaving. Michael Longfellow and Devin Walker are departing after 3 seasons, and Emil Joachim is leaving after 1 season. Also, multiple reports say that longtime cast member Heidi Gardner is leaving, although this hasn't officially been confirmed yet. So who's joining? Well, yesterday, 5 new cast members were announced. Tommy Brennan, Jeremy Culhane, Cam Patterson, and Veronica Slowakowska. Ben Marshall, who's part of Please Don't Destroy, becomes a featured player now. Ooh. You can see them when season 51 of SNL premieres on October 4th. Feels like it's shaping up to be a transition year for SNL after the big 50th. We'll have to see who's coming back and any other big changes this year.
I love Please Don't Destroy, so that was exciting news.
Yeah,
There you go. All right, thanks, Joe.
Yep.
We're going to end this hour with some inspiration for parents looking to manage their kids' screen time as a new school year gets underway. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis spoke to a mom in Maine who's going retro to keep her kids connected, and her idea is spreading.
In South Portland, Maine, 10-year-old Molly Morse is dialing into something completely bizarre for most kids her age.
Hello.
An old-fashioned landline with a curly cord. Before she got one, this was just a mystery.
What did you think it was?
A toy. I didn't get the fun of it because I didn't know how to use it.
But Molly found out it's not a toy on her 10th birthday after asking her mom for a cell phone.
She was hopeful, but we pivoted and we surprised her with a landline.
Karen Morse is a mental health professional.
Were you worried about the amount of screen time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew what I wanted to do at home was a little bit simpler.
That meant putting one landline in the dining room to keep all conversations in the open.
Hello?
Soon, Molly got the hang of it. So did her 8-year-old sister, Piper.
I think it's terrific.
They both love the independence.
I kind of get the advantage of scheduling my own playdates.
The only drawback at first, their friends didn't have a landline.
I only could call my grandparents.
Anyone else?
But Mom got busy spreading the word. Today they have a landline pod of about 24 people, including Molly's best friend, Scout.
Hello. Hi, Scout. I was really excited because I had wanted one after I heard that I couldn't get a cell phone.
Now, Scout's dad says something wonderful is happening.
I feel like we are holding on to a bit more innocence for longer, and I'm letting them be kids.
Cell phones will come, but not right now.
Hi.
Rahema Ellis, NBC News, South Portland, Maine.
Good for them. I love that.
Honestly, I fully remember that phase, right? Like when that was all you could do was talk when you were home.
I miss the phone that was on the wall, and then if someone called and it was for someone else, you would put it on the phone, sort of like resting while you waited, like putting them on hold. I miss those days. And you pick it up.
Well, really cool what they're doing.
All right. Congrats to them. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for kicking off your Wednesday with us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, in hot water, fresh fallout over President Trump's ongoing drug and immigration crackdown. The White House backing the commander-in-chief's call to strike what he says was a Venezuelan drug-carrying boat in the Caribbean, killing 11 alleged gang members. Well, back home, the president appearing to set his sights on Chicago in that latest push for military expansion in some of America's largest cities. We will bring you the latest. Also this morning, the deafening calls in Washington for more Trump administration transparency on Jeffrey Epstein. Top Democrats now pressuring the White House for answers as both survivors and family members of Epstein's victims speak out in an NBC News exclusive interview.
Why did you decide to come here today? I'm coming here because there's been a severe miscarriage of justice.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough. No more. We have to change the culture, and we have to provide safety and protection and belief when people come forward.
Plus, as burning questions plague some of America's top health agencies over the latest guidance on COVID shots. We're going to dig into a promising new clinical trial on one over-the-counter nasal spray that could hold the key to preventing infections. And later in the hour, Howard Stern off air, the swirling speculation around the legendary shock jock's future on the mic, and the exploding podcast landscape that could land his time slot on the chopping block. Hard to imagine anyone's airwaves without Howard Stern on them. He's been
Certainly a talker.
Icon for so long. Let's begin this hour in Washington with the latest on that deadly U.S. military strike against an alleged drug smuggling vessel in the Caribbean. President Trump shared this video showing the fiery explosion yesterday. He says the boat was operated by the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua.
It comes as the president also appears to be inching closer to deploying more federal resources, including the National Guard and Border Patrol, to fight crime in Democrat-led cities. NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake is following all of it for us. Garrett, good morning.
The White House has made it clear that President Trump intends to use his powers as commander-in-chief aggressively, whether targeting alleged drug smugglers in the Caribbean or waging his mass deportation campaign in American cities. But as the president weighs deploying troops in Chicago, a federal court in California has ruled his use of similar tactics there was illegal.
This morning, a warning from President Trump, posting this video of what the White House says is a strike on Venezuelan drug smugglers. The president writing, "Let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware." The White House says 11 members of the notorious Tren de Aragua gang were killed in the strike. The president designated that group a foreign terrorist organization earlier this year.
We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela, so we took it out.
It comes as the president appears poised to expand his use of the military to combat crime inside the country. Asked Tuesday about whether he'd send the National Guard into Chicago.
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when we're going in. I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing.
The president blasting the city for failing to control violent crime after weekend shootings there left 8 dead and more than 50 injured.
Chicago is a hellhole right now.
Illinois' Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker responding.
We know before anything has happened here that the Trump plan is to use any excuse to deploy armed military personnel to Chicago.
Pritzker says he expects federal immigration enforcement to ramp up in Chicago in the coming days, possibly pegged to Mexican Independence Day celebrations planned for later this month.
Let's be clear, the terror and cruelty is the point, not the safety of anyone living here.
But any National Guard deployment could be stymied by the courts after a federal judge in California ruled the president's mobilization of the National Guard and Marines in Los Angeles earlier this year was illegal. The judge warning that the president's use of the military, quote, creates a national police force with the president as its chief.
Meanwhile, Washington, D.C.'s mayor signed an order yesterday providing a pathway for the district to continue working with federal law enforcement, including setting up a joint operations center. The mayor noting violent crime here has fallen significantly since the White House surged federal resources into D.C. and took charge of its police force last month.
All right, Garrett, thank you.
Later this morning, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, will make their voices heard at a rally on Capitol Hill. Ahead of that, NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson sat down with some of the survivors and their families. Here's her exclusive interview.
Hey there, good morning to you. Pressure now building on Capitol Hill with a bipartisan push to force the release of more information related to the case of Jeffrey Epstein, who died by suicide, awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges in 2019. A Republican divide now emerging, with the White House blasting that push as a very hostile act to the administration, although adding the DOJ supports other efforts to release files. All of it ahead of a spotlight today on Epstein survivors. New fallout this morning after the congressional release of 30,000 plus pages of material related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. Democrats say the vast majority of it is not new information, and among Republicans, a divide. Some pushing for more information to be released by trying to force a vote in the House, with one GOP lawmaker saying the White House is lobbying against it. Today, a renewed spotlight on Epstein's hundreds of victims. 9 survivors and family members joining us, including the siblings of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, among the most vocal accusers, who died by suicide earlier this year.
She shouldn't be here. We see so much of our sister in every single one of them. We're here because they deserve justice.
All alongside Wendy Avis, who has never shared her story publicly until now.
How old were you? I was 14.
Were you abused by Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes.
Why are you deciding to speak and to share your story now?
Because not everybody is getting justice, and that's not right.
Avis says she met Epstein as a teenager living in Florida, burying the memory of her abuse until years later.
As an adult, it brings up a lot of mental health issues, and I've thought of hurting myself. And not now, but, over the last 6 or so years, we were victims, How many more of us do we have to lose?
In a show of solidarity, they're asking for accountability and especially transparency from Congress and the Trump administration.
This administration ran their campaign on this. It's your duty to do what your constituents, the American public is asking you for.
Have any of you had any communication with the DOJ?
No.
Nobody in this room has heard at all from the Department of Justice?
No.
They say they're angry. A top DOJ official spent 2 days interviewing Epstein's convicted co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving a 20-year sex trafficking sentence. And while White House officials have said President Trump is not actively considering a Maxwell pardon, he hasn't publicly ruled it out.
Show of hands, who would like to see President Trump definitively rule out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell? Every single one of you.
Just toying with the idea is an insult.
What's the next step that you want to see?
For them to finish this so that it can be over. It is heartbreaking to go on the news all the time and see all of this.
Well, we won't get accountability until they reopen an investigation.
It's not just about the past and holding people accountable. It's what's going to change in the future.
Right.
And my fear in all of this is that we are promoting a culture of silence. What is the message that we are sending to survivors of sexual violence about coming forward?
As for Maxwell, her attorney in response tells NBC News they cannot, I'm quoting here, respond to every outlandish claim or we wouldn't be able to get any actual work done. Adding only after Epstein's death did the narrative wrongfully shift to try to make her the kingpin. We have also reached out to the White House and DOJ for comment on our interview and have not yet heard back. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you.
Well, the clock is ticking as Congress returns this week following a month-long recess.
Lawmakers are facing a looming deadline to fund the government or face a shutdown at the end of September.
We have NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joining us with the latest here. Mel, good morning. So any bill needs 60 votes to pass the Senate. That means, though, finding bipartisan support. I mean, obviously, it's no secret how divided this Congress is. There are just weeks to go now. Do we think lawmakers are getting any closer to reaching agreements on how much money to spend, how to allocate that funding, and get this over the finish line?
Well, not yet. They have not gotten really any closer to finding a resolution here. But I will say Congress usually tends to act at the very last minute. So they do have a few more weeks before government funding runs dry. Now, what has been determined is that they're going to need something called a continuing resolution, essentially a temporary funding patch that just keeps current funding levels going for a certain amount of time. So some of the questions right now are, A, how long does that CR last? Is it a few weeks? Is it a few months? Sometimes they like to push those deadlines to the end of the year, right before Christmas, to try to force people into action. B, do Republicans try to add on any additional items, such as a D.C. crime bill or a D.C. crime fund, something Trump has called for example? And C, do Democrats go along with whatever Republicans come up with? And already we are seeing some signs that Democrats are really itching for a fight, unlike earlier this spring when they ultimately caved, at least in the Senate, the Democrats did, and gave in and avoided a shutdown. This time around, though, there's just so much more willingness among the leadership to stand up to Trump, especially as they're hearing from their base. And we did see some separate letters, both from Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer yesterday, saying they don't want to be rubber stamps for the Republican agenda and the Trump administration. So this could really be headed towards a showdown. But like I said, there's a few more weeks, so a lot can change between now and then.
Mel, we're also covering the ongoing fallout at the Centers for Disease Control after President Trump's decision to fire its director after just weeks on the job. That move reportedly came at the direction of Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., now RFK, facing pushback from his own staff members. We know he's supposed to testify later this week. What's the latest?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Over 1,000 current and former staffers for the Health and Human Services Department are out with a new letter today calling on Kennedy to either resign or to be fired if he refuses to step down on his own. And in this letter, which went to both Kennedy and members of Congress, these staffers argue that Kennedy has compromised the health of the nation. And they also argue that he is trying to install people at the agency who are essentially manipulating data and facts in order to fit a predetermined conclusion. Kennedy, of course, will testify on Capitol Hill this week. No doubt he's going to be grilled by members on both sides of the aisle over all of these shakeups. Guys.
Mel, thank you so much. Well, today may be the last day for the families of those who died in two 737 MAX crashes overseas to demand that Boeing face criminal charges. A federal judge in Texas will hear the Trump Justice Department's new plea argument with Boeing that would drop felony charges against the company. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest.
Yeah, that's right. A federal judge in Texas threw out the plea deal because he objected to how an independent monitor would be selected. Now the Trump DOJ's new deal would drop felony charges against Boeing in exchange for Boeing paying even more in fines and compensation. Some surviving family members are okay with that, but many think Boeing should not be allowed to avoid criminal prosecution. It was June of last year when Boeing's then CEO, David Calhoun, faced chants of shame from the families of the 346 people who died in two 737 MAX 8 crashes overseas.
I would like to apologize on behalf of all of our Boeing associates spread throughout the world, past and present, for your losses.
A few weeks later, Boeing pleaded guilty to deceiving the FAA regulators about new cockpit software that investigators later determined failed and contributed to the crash in Indonesia in 2018 and Ethiopia in 2019.
Responsibility and accountability is for them to be tried in court, for them to be put in jail if they find guilty.
But a judge rejected that plea deal in December, concerned about how an independent monitor would be chosen. Now the new Trump DOJ plea agreement drops the felony charge, but Boeing would pay $1.1 billion in fines and compensation to victims' families. The Justice Department says 110 family members approve of the deal, but many who don't will be given the chance to address a federal judge in Texas today. Nadia Melaron lost her daughter, Samia Stumo.
So the DOJ wants to drop the case against Boeing. So Boeing can kill 346 people and walk away with total impunity.
Boeing declining to comment ahead of today's hearing. The company is hoping the FAA will soon allow it to increase production of its 737s after undertaking steps to improve internal quality control and reporting. The increased oversight comes after the 737 door plug blowout last year. The new FAA chief says the company is still under intense FAA scrutiny.
Boeing's got a long way to go before they're going to get another bite at that apple.
That's the FAA chief there saying that Boeing is still not allowed to regulate itself. Legal analysts say it might have been tough to win a criminal conviction with a jury since Boeing is a company, not a person. And of course, Boeing is critical to the national economy, right? Aviation, space, and defense. Many say the company is simply too important, too big to fail. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you. Well, if you thought summer was over, think again. At least in some places, we've got record highs expected today in the Pacific Northwest.
Angie Lastman is tracking the temps for us. I mean, these are temps that even in July would be hot, Angie.
Yes, you guys are so right. By Pacific Northwest standards, we are talking about temperatures that are way above normal for this time of year. So no surprise that we've still got some of these heat alerts up. Notice where the heat warnings are. They are focused across Washington and Oregon, and that's the area that we're really concerned about again today to break some of those records. We know a lot of folks in these areas don't have air conditioning, so a high of 99 degrees in Spokane, really uncomfortable. And we'll be watching to see if we can kind of dial those temperatures back in the coming days. But in the meantime, not so much. It's still going to be a day into the 90s for places like Bend. You move just a little farther to the east, and you can see that cooler air that's kind of been ushered in thanks to a cold front that's working through parts of the northern plains in the Midwest. And that means that we're kind of on the other side of the coin here. We're talking well below normal temperatures for Minneapolis. So while we have the 90s in the Pacific Northwest, it's just the 60s. That's all you're going to get for your afternoon highs across parts of the plains and the upper Midwest. And even tomorrow, that sinks a little farther to the east and south, and mid 70s for Louisville, upper 60s for Detroit. Not chilly by any means into the afternoon hours in a lot of these spots, but definitely cooler than it should be for early September. We'll keep the 90s in triple digits out west as we get into tomorrow, but then we kind of settle into these more milder conditions as we get into the weekend across parts of the Great Lakes. It'll be cooler in the Midwest. One other thing to note out west, we still have fire alerts up. Notice those red flag warnings with abundant dry lightning. We don't have a whole lot of rain on the table. So anywhere from Mount Shasta up through Mount Rainier, we're going to be watching for the potential for some of those fires to start and spread quickly. Here's where the rain is. We've got that cold front that's bringing the cooler air, guys. It's bringing also a dose of some rain to our friends in the Great Lakes in the Midwest today, and then that works farther east for tomorrow as we add in some rain for the Northeast as well.
All right, we'll get ready for that. But we need it, as you said.
Yes, we do. Fire season, we need it. We'll take some of the rain.
There you go. Thanks, Angie. Of course.
New research could change the way we think about protecting ourselves from COVID. New clinical trial results suggest a common over-the-counter nasal spray, long used to treat seasonal allergies, may also help block infections from COVID and other respiratory viruses.
The study found that people who used the spray were significantly less likely to test positive for COVID compared to those who used a placebo.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins us now to discuss. Dr. Patel, good morning. So walk us through what the clinical trial found. How can this nasal spray help protect against COVID and other respiratory infections?
Yeah, we're all looking for potential alternatives to trying not just to get COVID infections, but we've been talking about how hard it might be to get COVID vaccines if you're young and healthy. So this study was quite interesting. First of all, put a lot of caveats on this. It was a randomized trial, 450 adults, but it was sponsored by the manufacturer of azolastine, which is that nasal spray that we're talking about, used for allergies. Must get a prescription in the United States, by the way, to get that. And it was in mostly healthy young white adults, mostly in their 30s. So this is not the high-risk population, but one could argue this is the healthy adult population that might need to figure out what they do if they can't afford a vaccine. Here's the bottom line. They followed these healthy adults over weeks and weeks just to see what viruses, if any, not just COVID, that they got. And lo and behold, they found a lower rate of COVID in the people that use this spray 3 times a day. I'm going to tell you, my own daughter uses this spray for allergies. It can be a little bitter. There's a little bit of an aftertaste. So it's not necessarily the thing that everyone wants to reach for 3 times a day, but this trial looked at it, found lower rates. 2.2% of the population that used the spray 3 times a day got COVID versus 6.7% with a placebo spray. Now, this also extended to other viruses, Joe and Savannah, so it's interesting. And it's mounting this evidence base that there can be ways to prevent getting an infection. So far, none of these statistics beat a vaccine.
But tell us more about this study, Dr. Patel. Like, I know that a lot of the participants here, they were relatively young, healthy. Does that mean that we can sort of take anything away from it for people who might not fit those descriptions?
Yeah, no, Savannah, I think always when we do these trials, it helps us to just learn a little bit more about what's possible. I think that, first of all, I think that again, you have to use this under a prescription. So I think you have to have a conversation with your doctor. And this could be a viable alternative for people who have a host of reasons that they can't get either vaccines, or we talked about this preventing other viruses like RSV and the flu. So you can even think of this, if it's applicable to you and your doctor agrees, that this could be even helpful on top of vaccines, because I've got a lot of immunocompromised family and friends. This could be the extra step that could help them. So I think it's an important trial, caveats included, but I think it's helping us get, again, just an evidence base for what we can do as an alternative or even in addition to vaccines to prevent viruses.
Yeah, you said nothing beats a vaccine right now, but for people who may already be using the nasal spray, I mean, could this be seen as a reliable alternative to vaccinations, or just more research do we need to get done?
I think it could be. I say everything with, I gave the caveats. This was sponsored by the manufacturer of the drug. It was done in Germany with a population that I wouldn't necessarily kind of spread to the rest of the United States or even just outside of the population parameters. But I do think that it's an incredible, if you're on this drug or this is something that your doctor has talked to you about, and you might be noticing, like I have in my daughter, well, she's not getting as many viruses, maybe this could be a factor. And so I think it just helps give us more information. And I think it's another conversation when you're sitting down with your doctor.
All right.
So interesting.
Dr. Patel, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It is nearly here, football fans. Tomorrow, the 2025 NFL season will finally kick off. It's not only a promising season because of the stars and the matchups, it's also an unprecedented one with some rule changes and games in new cities all across the globe. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke with our friends over at the Today Show this morning. Here's some of that conversation.
But you mentioned player safety and it being at the core of you can expand the season if you're making the game safer. Concussions obviously still happen, but we've got now this helmet technology that has really made a difference. As of April, though, only 30% of players are choosing to wear the highest performing helmets. What can you do about that? Is there a point where you say, okay, encouraging isn't getting the job done, we need to make it mandatory because it's good for the game?
Yeah, I think what's mandatory now is working with our Players Association and looking at the different helmets and giving them a choice, the players, but making sure that we take helmets out that really don't fit the standard, right? And so what's happened is they've continued to evolve into the better quality helmets as we develop new helmets with our partnership. And that's really been the difference. And so now players are wearing much better helmets than they were even 3 years ago. I think we'll probably have another 300 plus players upgrade into those better helmets this year. It's a little bit of education, a little bit of encouragement. And I think players are starting to understand it's the appropriate thing for them to do.
But it's not a thing where you're like, we're bringing down the hammer.
I think that to say it's going to be this helmet and that's the only helmet, I think is probably too far. I think what we should do is give them choices, but we should give them better choices.
Let's talk about the international aspect of the NFL now, because if I'm not mistaken, this season you'll have seven games outside the United States. That's the most ever. At what point do we see an NFL franchise outside the United States?
Yeah, listen, we hope to get to 16 regular season games that we can play over the season. That obviously would be easier with an 18-2 season also. But the reality is I think a team could be supported in London. I think a team could be supported in Germany. I think the reality is we need to try to find the way to do it competitively, fairly for everybody.
Our thanks to Savannah Guthrie and Craig Melvin for that interview. Football returns tomorrow with the Dallas Cowboys taking on their division rival, the Philadelphia Eagles, in the NFL kickoff. Tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. And then tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern, you can catch the NFL Kickoff Eve show. It's like Christmas on NBC and Peacock.
I am excited. Like, that's when you're like, okay, it's fall.
Exactly.
Fine.
Yeah, it does get us in the mood.
There you go. All right, there's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including the very latest out of Gaza, where local health authorities say dozens of Palestinians have been killed within the past few hours as Israel continues its advance into Gaza City. Our Richard Engel is in Jerusalem.
First, after the break, China stages a dramatic show of military might bolstered by visits from Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un. Why President Trump is sounding the alarm on social media. That's next.
We are back with a major show of military strength by China. The country held one of its largest ever military parades overnight to mark 80 years since the end of World War II. The superpower showcased its latest weapons and hardware, with the likes of Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un there to witness it all. NBC News International correspondent Janice Mackey-Freyer joins us now from Beijing. Janice, good morning.
Savannah, good morning. China debuted powerful new weapons in this massive parade, but there was more than military hardware on display today. Leaders from 26 countries, including Russia, North Korea, and Iran, the so-called axis of upheaval, were gathered to watch it, sending a clear message to the U.S. about a changing world and how they see China's place in it.
Overnight, a show of strength. China's largest ever military parade in Beijing, starting with cannons firing 80 times to mark 80 years since the end of World War II. The entire spectacle sending a clear message from Chinese President Xi Jinping about patriotism and power here. But an even bigger show, the diplomatic grandstanding of who attended. The leaders of Russia, North Korea, Iran, and nearly 24 countries. The first time that Xi, Kim Jong-un, and Vladimir Putin have appeared together, just weeks after President Trump's meeting with Putin in Alaska. On Truth Social, President Trump posting a message to Xi saying, "Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America." China's military has expanded under Xi's watch, today unveiling new hypersonic anti-ship missiles, underwater drones, and what's being billed as the world's most powerful laser. 10,000 troops marched with precision through Tiananmen Square, reviewed by Xi. From the sunroof of his limousine, Xi called out, "Greetings, comrades." And soldiers answered him, "Fight to win." Months of preparations and rehearsals have gone into this. From where we are, 6 square miles are in complete lockdown, with the country and the world watching not only the show, but who's watching it. Kim grabbing the spotlight from the moment he arrived in a bulletproof train with his daughter, Kim Ju-ae, tapped as a potential successor. In his speech, Xi said the Chinese nation is a great nation that fears no tyranny. And he warned China's rise is unstoppable. Security controls for this event were intense. School was canceled citywide. People couldn't look out a window if it faced onto the parade route. And in some areas, there was a ban on cooking breakfast this morning to cut down on smoke. All of it for a 70-minute show, but one with very high stakes for China. Savannah?
All right, Janice, thank you.
Some other world news now. The Israeli military is advancing on Gaza City this morning as it pushes to capture the famine-hit city by calling up thousands of reservists.
Yeah, health officials in the Palestinian enclave say at least 24 people have been killed so far today in Israeli attacks. 1 million Palestinians are at risk of being displaced again as international outcry over Israel's military offensive mounts.
NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel joins us now from Jerusalem. Richard, good morning. So just what is the latest on this Israeli push to take control of Gaza City? And tell us why some of Israel's reservists are actually refusing this call up to serve. I know you spoke with one of them.
So I'll start with the second part first. So a growing number of Israelis are starting to publicly express opposition to this war, particularly opposition to this current call-up of reserves. In fact, in Jerusalem right now, mothers of soldiers are protesting in front of the Israeli Knesset, Israel's parliament. They are not huge protests, but they are growing in frequency. And just a couple of weeks ago, there were protests again against the war, against the call-up of reserves, against Prime Minister Netanyahu, and there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis on the streets. So more Israelis are demonstrating, more Israelis are speaking out. Yesterday, a small number of Israeli reservists held a press event in which they publicly announced that they would not be serving, that they are against the war, that it would be immoral for them to back this war, refusing that a draft summons is illegal in this country, and it could involve jail time as a punishment. So there is this movement that is getting more visible, but it does not seem to be slowing down in any way the military call-up. Many reservists are showing up to duty. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu today has been meeting with Israeli soldiers who served in Gaza, thanking them, discussing the importance of this military campaign. And that is the next big phase of this war. There are daily strikes against Gaza, and many of them are now focused in and around Gaza City, which is the biggest city in the Gaza Strip, home, as you said, to about 1 million people, and some of them are starting to leave, and they are heading south into these so-called safe zones, one safe zone in particular, where Israel claims that there will be food and shelter provided. That safe zone, however, we've filmed in there extensively with our crew in Gaza and using freelance cameramen in Gaza because foreign journalists are not allowed into the Gaza Strip, and it is anything but safe. There are frequent Israeli strikes. Palestinians get shot while collecting food, while collecting water, while collecting anything to burn to keep themselves warm and to cook food. So it is an extremely dangerous place, even though it is called the safe zone. But we are now waiting for that big push on Gaza City, which could happen in a matter of days or just a few weeks.
Richard, also amid this mounting international outrage over Israel's actions in Gaza, Belgium's now the latest Western country to say that it will recognize a Palestinian state. They also say that they're going to impose sanctions on Israel. Tell us about the measures that Belgium is taking, why, how this kind of fits in to a larger international conversation.
So this is a profound question that perhaps lies at the root of this whole conflict. It certainly fits into where I am right now. I'm in Jerusalem. This is the old city. Every stone in this city is contested, and this area is the most contested of all. And Palestinians want East Jerusalem, the old city, to be the capital of a future Palestinian state, a state of Palestine. And according to a peace process that has been on and off, now completely off, for the last 20 years, there was supposed to be an end of this conflict with a division of two states, that there would be Israel and next to it would be the state of Palestine, potentially with East Jerusalem as its capital. But with each year, with each action, particularly by this government, the Prime Minister Netanyahu and some of his far-right extremists, creating a Palestinian state is increasingly difficult, if not impossible. Israeli settlements in Palestinian areas are growing. They're expanding every week, practically. In fact, Israel just approved a massive settlement project right on the outskirts of Jerusalem. And there's talk that the Palestinians in Gaza, who are now, as you mentioned, suffering famine and under attack, there is talk that they could be displaced en masse, that all 2 million of them could be removed from the Gaza Strip, making a future Palestinian state impossible. You can't have a state without land if it's covered in settlements, and you can't have a state if all the people have been kicked out. So that is why you're seeing this increasing movement from some European states to say, we're going to recognize a Palestinian state. We're going to say that we accept Palestine, even if in practical terms, what could be Palestine every week is less and less feasible.
All right. Richard Engel. Richard, appreciate your reporting. Thank you. Coming up, a game of ding-dong ditch turning deadly in one Texas community.
After the break, we've got more on the man accused of gunning down an 11-year-old boy in a prank gone wrong, and why Lone Star state self-defense laws are now taking center stage. That's next.
We're back now with a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics this morning.
We're going to start with the fight for a majority in Congress that's already heating up with more than a year to go until the next midterm elections. For that story and more, let's bring in NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor. Sahil, good morning.
Good Wednesday morning, Joe and Savannah. We start the day in politics with the two major forces shaping President Trump's second midterm election. The first is redistricting, with multiple states redrawing their maps to give their party advantages in the House. Experts tell NBC News that Republicans could net out between 4 and 12 seats just from redrawing the maps. The second is Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which remains unpopular. Republicans are still working to sell it and turn public opinion around, while Democrats see it as part of their winning message in 2026. And speaking of redistricting, California Governor Gavin Newsom has rolled out a wave of new ads costing about $100 million to promote the measure he has secured on the ballot this fall in a special election to change the House map and add Democratic seats. It includes 10 ads across TV and digital by the end of the week, encouraging support and turnout for Prop 50. One of the ads goes after President Trump, accusing him of using a dictator's playbook with attempts to suppress the free press and carry out warrantless arrests. And finally, several Republicans are uneasy with the White House's attempt at a pocket rescissions package to unilaterally cancel billions of dollars in funding approved by Congress. Among them is Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who sits on the Appropriations Committee. She said in a statement, quote, "I strongly object to the Office of Management and Budget's unlawful attempt to pursue a nearly $5 billion pocket rescission." She said it's Congress who bears the constitutional responsibility for funding the government, and any effort to claw back resources outside of the appropriations process undermines that responsibility. Murkowski, like other Republicans, said she worries that this move by the White House could complicate the task of avoiding a government shutdown at the end of this month, which requires bipartisan support, and that it could throw the entire process into chaos. And that is a look at what's making news in politics this morning. Guys?
All right, Sahil, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, police in Houston are calling the fatal shooting of an 11-year-old boy a homicide after an apparent ding-dong ditch prank went horribly wrong. NBC News correspondent Jesse Kirsch has the details of this disturbing story.
Gonzalo Leon Jr. is behind bars after police say he shot and killed an 11-year-old boy who was pranking people in this Houston neighborhood. The 42-year-old suspect appeared before a judge.
You're accused of the first-degree felony offense of murder.
According to investigators, 11-year-old Julian Guzman and his cousin were ringing people's doorbells and running away Saturday night. Then the prank, often known as Ding Dong Ditch, turned deadly when the boys allegedly reached the wrong house too many times.
The suspect came out of the gate next to his house, fired once into the ground, and then drew down on this 11-year-old boy who was running away.
You don't think he haphazardly shot the gun and it accidentally hit the boy? You believe that he aimed at this boy?
That is exactly what we believe.
Sean Tier is the prosecuting district attorney.
Was there ever a moment where your team considered this may have been self-defense?
No, never.
Investigators say the boy was shot in the back.
There were no weapons that this young man had. There's nothing to suggest that he was taking property.
Police say Leon Jr. was questioned and released before the SWAT detail helped take him into custody. Meanwhile, the Houston community is memorializing a child's life cut short.
The DA tells me he believes that man is still a danger to the community. Prosecutors want bond set at $1 million.
All right, Jesse, thank you for that. Well, for more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Senadella. Angela, good morning. So it sparked a lot of conversations, this whole thing, something specifically that's called the Castle Doctrine. This is part of the state's self-defense laws here. Explain what that is and how it applies.
So this idea is that you are the king or the queen of your home, that your home is like a castle. And that means that when someone is coming to attack you in your home, you don't have to wait for the police, you don't have to retreat, you can defend yourself. But the problem is that this doctrine, like all self-defense doctrines, has very strict requirements. And above all, it's a concept of reasonableness. In that moment, were you reasonably worried that this person, this intruder, was going to harm you, was going to harm your family? Or were you not worried? Was that person running away? There's also this idea of immediate necessity. You can't then chase someone down after they were a threat if they're not immediately harmful in that moment.
So if police and prosecutors are trying to build a case showing this wasn't self-defense, what's the type of evidence or information they need to be collecting and presenting?
So a lot of what we just heard here from the prosecutor, the fact that he was not holding a weapon. So if this intruder was running towards you at the time that you shot them, and if they were raising a weapon at you, that could possibly then indicate self-defense. But if they are fleeing, so the fact that he was shot in the back and was running away, that indicates much less of a threat, especially this immediate necessity concept.
Pranks like this, I mean, ding-dong ditching has been around forever, but things like TikTok make it a little bit more kind of like a prank or a trend to go ahead and do it. It is technically trespassing, though. I mean, could parents end up facing charges in something like this?
So criminally, parents are generally not held responsible for their children's crimes unless they themselves have committed a crime. So, for example, this concept of criminal negligence, we've seen this with the parents of a school shooter, for example. If they have been reckless in some way, then it's possible. But what they are possibly liable for is damages at a civil level. So not necessarily criminal, meaning not going to jail. But if they, for example, commit property damage, if your children do, you could be held liable for that.
All right, Angela, thank you so much. Well, coming up, you could call it a real nail biter at your next manicure or pedicure.
When Morning News Now returns, why one type of popular polish is actually getting snipped overseas, the safety concerns popping up over its use in America. That's next.
We're back with the story you might want to hear before you go get your next manicure or pedicure. European officials have banned a chemical commonly found in gel nail polishes. This is over safety concerns, but it is still allowed and it is still widely used here in the U.S. NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung has the details.
Hey there, gel nail polish has been a popular choice at nail salons for decades. The magic, it can last around 2 to 3 weeks longer than a coat of regular polish. But the European Union's latest ban on a key ingredient, effective immediately, is raising new concerns over the safety of these products and their possible health effects. A new ban in Europe has people polishing up on their manicures.
You need to throw away all your gels.
Trimethylbenzoyl diphenylphosphine oxide, or TPO for short, is a chemical found in most gel nail polishes. It helps speed up the dry time as the polish hardens under UV lighting, giving nails an extra glossy finish that does not chip easily. The European Union first announced the new regulation back in May, saying the substance can be toxic for reproduction and declaring it should no longer be allowed in cosmetic products. However, health experts say the EU regulation was influenced by a study on animals, not humans.
Why is America not banning it too? If these other places is saying that it's harmful, they need to ban it here too.
The ban now fueling conversations here in the U.S. on whether it's safe to use.
When we're making that sort of evaluation in the States, we're really looking to see, like, what is the exposure? What is the real risk?
As a dermatologist, if a client comes to you with concern, are you telling them to avoid gel manicures?
I am not. You know, I always tell my patients I'm here to give you information, and then this really is a personal and individual decision because I don't have evidence that it is truly harmful.
In a statement, the Nail Manufacturer Council on Safety says safe and effective alternatives to TPO are already on the market. Clients can continue to enjoy gel manicures with confidence. Globally, the gel nail polish market is valued at nearly $2 billion. Initially introduced in the 1980s, gel nail polish had a breakthrough in popularity nearly 30 years later when shellac arrived on the scene and had nails looking polished to perfection for weeks longer than your standard polish. But some salons are already seeing customers change their habits.
We definitely have been seeing a trend of people not doing gel.
Tina Wang is the owner of Lanula in Brooklyn, a nail salon that says it only uses non-toxic polishes. But some gel options still include TPO.
Someone who's worried about it, I would just say, don't do it. We have this other great polish that lasts almost as long, is almost as durable, and it's pretty good for most people.
So Dr. Henry says she does not believe a federal ban on TPO is likely here in the U.S., but she says if you're worried about chemicals, some brands do make a TPO-free version. And another concern for gel manis, though low, UV exposure. She says make sure to put on sunscreen on your hands before heading to the salon if you're sticking with gel. Back to you.
All right, Kaylee, thanks. I think it's just a no for me from here on out.
There you go. Me too. Let's get a look at what's making waves on Wall Street this morning. Disney will have to pay up a decent chunk of change over allegations it collected data from kids.
CNBC's Silvana Henao has that in other money news. Hey, Silvana.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Yeah, so Disney will pay $10 million to settle allegations by the Federal Trade Commission that it unlawfully collected children's personal data for targeted ads. The FTC says Disney allowed the data to be collected from kids who watched videos on YouTube without notifying their parents as required by the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. Disney gets a portion of YouTube revenue from ads placed with its videos and ads it sells directly. Disney says it's committed to supporting the well-being and safety of kids and families. Walmart is expanding its streaming offerings to Walmart Plus members, announcing a new partnership with NBC Universal's Peacock. Starting September 15th, subscribers can choose to get the ad-supported versions of Peacock Premium or Paramount Plus and can switch between the two every 90 days. Walmart Plus costs $98 a year and includes free shipping, free same-day delivery on groceries and prescriptions, discounts on gas, and other benefits. U.S. authorities seizing a shipment of fake Labubu dolls last week at the airport in Seattle. A spokesperson for Customs and Border Protection says they seized more than 11,000 dolls that would have a retail value of $500,000 if they were real. No arrests have been made, and the agency says the fake Labubus will be destroyed. Fake Labubus are often called Lafufus. Opmar, that's the Chinese toy maker behind the dolls, hasn't responded to a request from comment from NBC News, guys.
Okay, Lafufu.
Lafufu.
Brian warned us. They're out there.
Brian gave me a mini one that you unbox, and it has a letter on it, but it's like a blind unboxing. I just so happened to get the letter S, and suddenly the Labubu goes everywhere with me.
There you go. And it's a real one, not a Lafufu.
It's real. It's not a Lafufu.
Right.
Thanks, Silvana.
Growing speculation about Howard Stern's future with SiriusXM, the radio company that has been his home for nearly 2 decades. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk explains.
Could the Howard Stern era be over? Rumors have swirled for weeks that the 71-year-old show was on the chopping block at SiriusXM. Stern was supposed to return yesterday from a summer hiatus, but now that date has been pushed back, fueling another round of rumors.
Hey now, good morning.
This morning, legendary broadcaster Howard Stern remains off air, while speculation about the future of his iconic show grows louder. The first headlines appearing in tabloids in early August, questioning whether Stern would renew his contract with SiriusXM.
Howard Stern, fired, canceled. Is it really bye-bye buoy?
In response, the show released a promo playing up the drama.
Chaos is swirling at the Howard Stern Show. Nobody knows what's going on or who to trust.
And teasing Stern's return.
Howard Stern will speak. Tuesday, September 2nd.
But he never made it on the air yesterday. Instead, the show posting a new message, touting his return would actually happen next Monday. Stern signed a 5-year contract in 2020, reportedly worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But media watchers say these days, the aging shock jock has a lot more competition.
What we've seen is a shift of listener habits away from appointment radio, appointment listening, towards this on-demand podcast universe where there are a lot of big stars.
This is the United States of America. We've got freedoms here you can't even imagine.
The Howard Stern Show has been around since the 1980s.
We're going to have more sex on this show than we've ever had before.
The brash radio host becoming wildly popular by pushing the envelope, dominating radio with his humor and shocking antics.
I turned to my wife, I said, I have got to go all the way.
But in recent years, the tone of the show has changed. Stern choosing to wade into highly charged political issues like vaccines.
Their freedom. I want my freedom to live.
And presidential politics, even becoming highly critical of one of his longtime guests, Donald Trump.
I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
Now some are wondering if this self-proclaimed king of all media is on the verge of giving up his throne. What's remarkable, say analysts, is how quickly the media landscape has changed since Stern's last deal. SiriusXM has been investing in podcast deals with lots of big-name stars, and it's expanded into sports as well, which may mean Stern is not as important to their brand anymore. NBC News has reached out to both Howard Stern and SiriusXM, but has not heard back.
Stay tuned. Steph, thank you.
Coming up, the story of an unbreakable bond that was forged decades ago.
What our Ann Thompson revealed to a group of descendants of World War II vets as we mark 80 years since the end of the conflict. That's next.
Welcome back. World War II formally came to an end 80 years ago this week. And it is estimated that just 45,000 of the more than 16 million Americans who fought are still with us today.
NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson got to meet a group of veterans' descendants who are working to keep the stories of their heroic service alive, a group that didn't realize what they shared.
There's not a whole lot of World War II vets or their first-line survivors left, so it's our responsibility to get that information out as far and wide as we can.
Under the wing of World War II's B-17 bomber are its living legacy, some of the descendants of the crews of the Flying Fortress.
Did your veterans ever talk about what it was like to fly in that plane?
Some of the best memories I have of them are sitting at the kitchen table and listening to them talk about the airplane.
Adam and Mary Beth Taylor, grandson and daughter of John Jones.
Growing up, we had a picture of his bomb group, that hung on the wall, but he really didn't mention a lot of war stories.
Leslie Nall Oliverio, daughter of John Nall.
He was quiet on some things and talked about other things. He had won the Distinguished Flying Cross because he had to make a belly landing.
And Chris Olson, grandson of Lawrence Terry.
My grandfather had passed away before I was born, and from what I know, he was a top turret gunner on a B-17.
Strangers about to find out they have something remarkable in common.
Your grandfather won a Distinguished Flying Cross.
Yes.
Your father won a Distinguished Flying Cross. Adam and Maribeth?
Yeah, he won a Distinguished Flying Cross.
They all won.
Yeah. I've got an old photo of my grandfather and a flight crew, but I've never known the name of his aircraft.
Well, Chris, you might want to ask the other three people here because all of you are descendants of the crew that flew the Flying Fortress on February 22nd, 1944. Yeah. Isn't that incredible?
It's amazing.
Now we need to go and start over.
Yeah, we need to start over
the story.
The connection made by Lisa Elsie, a genealogist at Ancestry, whose grandfather, Harold Lounsbury Jr., was part of the crew too.
I never knew my grandfather, so I wanted to find out more about him through finding out about his connection to World War II.
What they all share is a heroic story.
Here's the group photo.
See, this is what was growing up in my house.
It's been a minute since I've had to pick him up.
There's my dad.
And then mine's right here.
After successfully bombing an aircraft factory in Bernburg, Germany, the 508th Squadron flew back to England, but went off course over Brussels and into trouble, as Adam's grandfather wrote in his memoir.
The sound of bursts was a thwack, followed immediately by pings and plunks as pieces of shrapnel hit the plane.
Granted special permission, they went inside a B-17 at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force in Georgia.
This is where he would have been.
Oh, man. When you look at this and you see how small, how vulnerable they were, are you in even more awe? Yes.
This really brings it to life.
Their veterans plane was seriously damaged, 3,600 bullet holes, and no hydraulics, but still in the air. The pilot was wounded, so Leslie's father, the co-pilot, took over.
And my dad had to jettison the fuel and take the B-17 in for a landing, which wasn't done very successfully. Very often, he's 20-some years old doing this.
He piloted the damaged bomber across the English Channel, losing altitude all the way. Adam's grandfather described the rest.
She brushed the earth, the tail section dragged, then she gently nosed down and started to slide. Perfect, beautiful, textbook.
All 10 men survived.
Your dad, I think, said in his diary, he's alive because of your dad. And we're all here because of that.
Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Wow, we're still learning so much 80 years later. It's extraordinary.
It's an incredible reveal there, too, for those members of the family. Wow.
That'll do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us, though. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.